Before you jump into writing, you need to consider the purpose of what you're about to write. Do you want this to be a piece that drives traffic on a long-term basis to your site, or is this a one-off timely piece that's relevant now, but it won't necessarily be of interest in 6 months' time? So let me give you an example. If a new product's released in your niche, that's information that people very much want to know about today, and they want to know what that means to them today. But in time, what's new and interesting today won't necessarily be new and interesting tomorrow. And what people want to know about a product in the future will probably be somewhat different than what people want to know about it when it's new. So consider what your goal is with the post and how long you want it to be relevant and interesting for your audience, and how long you want that post to be bringing traffic to your site. Content that's written in a timeless fashion is called evergreen content because it's good no matter what time of year it is, or even if it's into next year. So let's go back to our tomato growing niche and show some of the ways that a piece of evergreen content would compare against a piece of timely content. So our fictional post here is going to be about the release of a new fertilizer for tomatoes. Our evergreen content piece wouldn't make a reference to the date. It would just say that the product is available. A timely piece might reference the date by saying that this brand new exciting fertilizer became available this week, or some other similar sort of reference to the date. Evergreen content can also benefit from not actually having your WordPress theme show the post date on it at all, or in the post metadata, post byline. In timely content, you would want that date to remain because that would be relevant. You're talking about it happening today, this week, in 3 days, whatever it might be. So the date is an interesting and relevant piece of information for your site visitors. You want your best content to be evergreen. Your How to Grow Tomatoes post on the tomato growing blog, like a main keyword post, should be written in an evergreen format. You wouldn't want a How to Grow Tomatoes post to say it's March right now, so it's time to get planting, because that'll turn visitors off who hit your site looking for information on how to grow tomatoes in November. They'll say, oh, she wrote this post, but it was only relevant when it's spring. How do I start growing tomatoes now? So you want to write your piece in such a way that it will work for your visitors no matter when they land on your site. I've heard this kind of evergreen content also called pillar content or flagship content, so you might have heard those terms too. It's the stuff that the content, the pieces, the videos, the articles that cover your main keyword in depth, so that whenever and from wherever a new visitor gets to your site, they can see the work that you've put out that answers the exact questions that they have about your niche. The broad questions, the big questions, the overview stuff. So like we talked about in the beginning, not every piece of content has to be evergreen content, but before you sit down and put out a piece of matter, you should know if you're doing evergreen work or not, so that you can phrase things correctly and refrain from naming dates and things like that, so that this piece of content that you are taking the time to produce will be as long-lasting as possible. So let's take a look at some examples of both evergreen content and timely content. So here's my site. Here's a post that I put out. This is a very long post, and this is an evergreen post. I wrote it in such a way that it will be relevant no matter when you read it. And should there be a massive shakeup in the internet marketing world where people only do their best all the time, which unfortunately isn't the case always, then maybe this piece would become out of date. But otherwise, I really don't anticipate that. There's always people who want to fall for the get-rich-quick stuff, and that's kind of what I was talking about here. So this is going to be relevant no matter when somebody comes to my site and reads this post. Here's another one, same deal. Now this is sort of a hybrid in that I included reference to how to do something on Facebook. And Facebook, of course, may phase out this feature or not. We know that Facebook changes a lot, but most of the content in this post is evergreen, and were Facebook to make a change that made this section no longer relevant, I could just delete it, and the article would absolutely stand on its own still. Here's another one. This one was written in May of 2009. It is still as true today as it was then. This is a pillar post, an evergreen post that everybody who wants to do internet marketing with a mix of social media should absolutely read. And I wrote it with that in mind. I wrote it in such a way that it would stand the test of time. Now, to show you some timely pieces, this one was a deal that was only available for 2 weeks or 11 days or something like that. So I edited it at some point to show the date that it closed up, and it is no longer available now, this particular offer. And what I would probably do long run with this is change it to reflect what the current offer is from this affiliate program. Instead of having people land on the page and realize that they can't get this anymore and just leave, I would have people land on the page and tell them what they can get. So that's a way that you can also update that timely content to kind of make it more evergreen. And another example of that is this piece of content where I was telling people on my site about a webinar that was going to be going on that evening. And of course, it's past that date now, and so the webinar is no longer available that evening or tonight to somebody who might land on this page today. So what I would do in this case is update this post to direct people to the replay, because it's the webinar itself and the content that was shared on the webinar is still very timely and or is still evergreen, is still relevant, is still interesting to people in the internet marketing community, and it's still something that I support 100%. It just isn't going on tonight is the only difference. So I would update this post possibly to direct people to the replay. Now, none of this is to say that evergreen content will never have to be updated. Most niches will have developments and news eventually, and you may have to adjust for that and publish some timely content in that post, or publish or re-update your evergreen content. So make a point to check that evergreen content once a year or so and see if it needs any tweaks so that it remains 100% on point for your site's newest visitors. Some content is best suited to being evergreen, and some content is best suited to being timely. Neither one of those, evergreen or timely, is better than the other, and in fact your site will most likely have a mix of both, just like mine does. Sometimes timely content can be changed to be more evergreen, like I showed you with these two, the backlinks post and the webinar post on my own site. However, it's a good idea to write something as evergreen if it can be written that way, so that the work that you put into creating that content in the first place can be rewarded for a long time to come, and so that you don't have to go back and change it at some point. Once you've written evergreen content, don't let it die in your archives. Give people a way to find it. Highlight your best evergreen content in like a Get Started Here tab at the top of your site, a widget in your sidebar listing your best posts so that new visitors for your site can find it easily, and that way that really great evergreen relevant how-to content that people go to your site to find, it's right there in front of their face and available for them. It's one of the things about a blog that is beneficial in that your most recent stuff usually shows up at the top of your front page so that people get the newest information first when they visit your site. And that's great for people who return to your site or subscribe to your RSS feed all the time. But for new people to your site who are really looking for an introduction on, say, how to grow tomatoes, they might not be as interested in a new fertilizer that's come out, like a post that you just created yesterday about this great new fertilizer. Somebody who just wants to learn how to grow tomatoes just wants your post on how to grow tomatoes. So it's important that you make those evergreen posts available and easy for people to see when they land on your site, so that the people get exactly what they're wanting, so that the search engines see that you have some really great long-standing evergreen content for your main keyword.